This simple habit is destroying sleep for older adults with anxiety. Medical alert. Have you ever found yourself lying awake at 3 a.m., your heart pounding in your chest, your mind racing with thoughts that seem to grow more intense with each passing minute? The darkness of your bedroom feels almost suffocating as you watch the minutes tick by on your clock, knowing that another night of restful sleep is slipping away, replaced by exhaustion and worry. For millions of older adults across the country, this scenario isn't just an occasional bad night. It's a recurring nightmare that's silently eroding their physical health, cognitive function, emotional well-being, and overall quality of life. What makes this situation even more troubling is that many seniors don't realize that a simple daily habit they've developed over the years could be the hidden culprit behind their sleep troubles and increasing anxiety. This seemingly innocent routine has been scientifically proven to trigger powerful anxiety responses in the brain, creating a perfect storm that makes restorative sleep nearly impossible to achieve. The consequences are far-reaching. Increased risk of cardiovascular problem, accelerated cognitive decline, compromised immune function, and a significantly diminished ability to enjoy daily life. But here's the good news that offers real hope. Once you identify this habit and understand how it's affecting your nervous system, you can take specific, proven steps to counteract its effects and reclaim the deep, peaceful sleep your body and mind desperately need at this stage of life. In today's video, we're going to reveal exactly what this sleep-destroying habit is, why it affects older adults so severely, and most importantly, the 5 scientifically backed techniques that can help you break free from this cycle of anxiety and insomnia. These solutions have helped thousands of people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond transform their nights from hours of frustration and worry into periods of genuine rest and recovery. If you're struggling with sleep problems or know someone who is, make sure to watch until the end because the final technique we'll share is particularly powerful, yet often overlooked by medical professionals. It's an approach that addresses the root cause of sleep anxiety in a way that medications simply cannot. Before we dive into this important information, take a moment to click the subscribe button below and turn on notifications. Each week, we share practical, evidence-based approaches that can significantly improve your mental well-being. Many of our subscribers tell us these videos have been life-changing for them or for loved ones they care about. And we want you to experience these benefits too. Your well-being matters, and small changes in how you approach anxiety and sleep can lead to profound improvements in how you feel each day. Now, let's uncover the hidden habit that's sabotaging your sleep and mental health, and most importantly, what you can do about it starting tonight. The habit that's silently destroying the sleep quality of millions of older adults is evening news consumption and late-night media exposure, especially through smartphones, tablets, and television. This finding comes from multiple research studies, including a comprehensive analysis from the Sleep Foundation that found over 65% of adults over 60 who experience anxiety-related sleep disturbances engage in some form of news or social media consumption within the hour before attempting to sleep. While staying informed about current events might seem harmless or even responsible, something you've perhaps done your entire adult life, the constant barrage of negative news stories, global crises, health scares, economic uncertainties, and political tensions creates what neurologists call a hypervigilance response in your brain. This state of heightened alertness is the exact opposite of the mental and physical relaxation necessary for sleep onset. This is particularly problematic for older adults for several important physiological and psychological reasons. First, our brain's ability to regulate emotional responses to negative stimuli naturally changes as we age. Studies from the National Institute on Aging have shown that older adults often experience prolonged emotional reactions to negative information compared to younger adults. This means that a troubling news story that a 30-year-old might process and set aside relatively quickly can continue to resonate emotionally for hours in someone over 65. Dr. Richard Sussman, former director of the Division of Behavioral and Social Research at the National Institute on Aging, explains, as we age, the emotional centers of our brain remain robust, while some of the regulatory mechanisms that help younger adults switch off emotional responses may become less efficient. This can lead to a situation where negative emotional content, such as disturbing news stories, has a more persistent impact. Second, the blue light emitted from digital devices directly suppresses melatonin production, the hormone essential for initiating sleep. For seniors already experiencing age-related decreases in natural melatonin levels, this additional disruption can be devastating. Studies from Harvard Medical School have documented up to a 50% reduction in melatonin production following evening exposure to blue light from screens, with the effect being more pronounced in adults over 55. Third, and perhaps most critically, evening news consumption creates what sleep specialists call rumination loops. cycles of worried thinking that are extremely difficult to break once you're lying in bed. Your brain essentially becomes trapped in problem-solving mode, analyzing threats and concerns that you can do nothing about at that moment. This creates a surge in stress hormones, like cortisol and adrenaline, which further prevents your body from transitioning into sleep. Dr. Elizabeth Marks, a geriatric psychiatrist specializing in sleep disorders, observes, "I've seen countless older patients who've developed what I call news anxiety syndrome. They watch the evening news out of habit or a sense of civic duty, then spend hours in bed ruminating about societal problems they have no direct control over. Their brains simply cannot disengage from these concerns, leading to chronic insomnia that medications alone fix." This pattern is particularly insidious because it often develops gradually over years or even decades. What might have started as a reasonable habit of staying informed has transformed, in our current 24/7 news cycle, into an overwhelming flood of often alarming information that the brain was never designed to process, especially in the vulnerable hours before sleep. The problem has been exacerbated in recent years by two significant factors. First, news outlets increasingly emphasize alarming emotional content to capture attention in a competitive media landscape. Headlines are crafted to trigger emotional responses rather than simply inform. Second, the proliferation of smartphones means many older adults are consuming news not just from television, but from multiple sources throughout the day and right up until bedtime, creating a constant state of low-grade stress that peaks in the evening hours. I need to pause here and ask you something important. What specific thoughts tend to keep you awake at night when anxiety strikes? You know, everyone experiences anxiety in unique ways, and sharing this experience can be the first step toward understanding it better. I know you may have never talked about this with anyone before. Perhaps you think no one would understand, or that your feelings aren't important, but I want you to know that here, in this space, your experience matters deeply. Leave us a comment below completing the phrase, "When anxiety keeps me awake, I usually worry about." Your courage in sharing might be exactly what someone else needs to read today to feel less alone. And in upcoming videos, we'll specifically address those moments you share. This is a community of mutual support, where every word you share is received with respect and understanding. Now, let's explore the first effective technique to break the cycle of evening news-induced anxiety and sleep disturbances: the media sunset protocol. This approach is based on the concept of creating a buffer zone between information consumption and sleep, allowing your nervous system to naturally transition from a state of alertness to one of relaxation. The protocol has three key components that work together to reset your pre-sleep routine. First, establish a firm news curfew, at least 2 hours before your intended bedtime. This means no news programs, social media scrolling, or even reading news articles after this cutoff time. Research from Harvard Medical School has found that giving your brain this buffer period allows the stress hormones triggered by concerning information to naturally decrease before you attempt to sleep. Dr. Charles Czeisler, chief of the Division of Sleep and Circadian Disorders at Brigham and Women's Hospital, recommends, just as we wouldn't drink coffee right before bed due to its stimulating effects, we should avoid consuming emotionally activating news content in the hours before sleep. The brain needs time to process and diffuse the emotional charge of troubling information. This doesn't mean you must be uninformed. Rather, consider moving your news consumption to earlier in the day when you have time to process the information and take any constructive actions it might inspire. Many successful practitioners of the media sunset protocol choose to review news briefly in the morning and perhaps again in early afternoon, but never after dinner. Second, replace news consumption with calming, non-stimulating activities during those 2 hours before bedtime. This might include gentle stretching, listening to soft instrumental music, reading fiction, never news or self-help, engaging in a creative hobby like drawing or knitting, or practicing mindfulness meditation. The key is to choose activities that gently engage your mind without provoking anxiety or deep thought. For Harold, a 72-year-old former teacher from Denver who struggled with anxiety-induced insomnia for years, implementing this protocol made a remarkable difference. "I used to watch the 10 o'clock news every night, thinking I needed to stay informed," he shared. "Then I'd spend hours awake worrying about everything from climate change to the economy, things I couldn't possibly solve at midnight. Since creating my 2-hour buffer zone and replacing news with classical music and sketching, I'm falling asleep within 30 minutes most nights. The problems of the world are still there, but I've realized I can be an informed citizen without sacrificing my sleep and health." The third component of the media sunset protocol involves consciously closing the mental file on any concerning information you've consumed earlier in the day. This can be done through a simple journaling exercise, where you write down any worries or thoughts about news stories that might be lingering in your mind, followed by the phrase, "This matter is now closed for today." There is nothing more I can do about this tonight. The physical act of writing this declaration helps your brain receive permission to temporarily set aside these concerns. Dr. Jessica Matthews, a neuropsychologist specializing in late-life anxiety disorders, explains. This journaling technique works because it honors your concerns rather than dismissing them. You're essentially telling your brain, yes, this is important, and yes, we've acknowledged it. Now we're making the choice to set it aside until tomorrow, when we can actually do something constructive about it if needed. This approach is much more effective than trying to simply suppress worrisome thoughts, which typically causes them to intensify. The media sunset protocol is particularly effective because it addresses both the environmental triggers of anxiety, exposure to troubling news, and the cognitive patterns that sustain anxiety, rumination, and worry. By implementing all three components consistently, you're not just treating symptoms, you're addressing a root cause of sleep-disrupting anxiety. The second technique that has shown remarkable results for older adults with anxiety-related sleep issues is called sensory anchoring. This method works by deliberately engaging your sensory systems to override the abstract, thought-based nature of anxiety. When we're caught in anxious thinking, we're typically disconnected from our physical senses, existing primarily in a world of concepts, fears, and mental projections. Sensory anchoring brings you back to the concrete present moment through deliberate sensory experience. Dr. Alan Wolfelt, a grief counselor who works extensively with older adults experiencing anxiety following loss, describes the approach this way. Anxiety thrives in the abstract, in the what-ifs, the maybes, the uncertain futures. But our senses exist only in the present moment. By deliberately engaging with sensory experiences, we give our overactive minds a rest from time traveling to worrisome futures or regretful pasts. Start by choosing 2 sensory experiences that you find particularly soothing. These might include the scent of lavender or vanilla, which research has shown can lower heart rate and blood pressure. Studies at Wesleyan University found that participants who sniffed lavender before bedtime spent more time in deep sleep and reported feeling more energized the following morning. The weight and texture of a specially chosen blanket that provides gentle, even pressure. Weighted blankets have been shown to reduce anxiety by stimulating pressure receptors that signal safety to the nervous system. For older adults, even a heavier-than-average throw blanket can provide this benefit without being too restrictive. The sound of specific nature recordings, like ocean waves or gentle rain. Research from the University of Pennsylvania Sleep Center found that consistent nature sounds helped participants fall asleep 38% faster than those in a control group. The taste of a small sip of herbal tea, like chamomile or valerian root, both of which contain compounds that naturally promote relaxation. A systematic review published in the journal Phytomedicine found that valerian root significantly improved sleep quality in 89% of participants with anxiety-related insomnia. The feel of a smooth worry stone or other tactile object in your palm. Repetitive tactile stimulation, such as rubbing a smooth stone or soft fabric, has been shown to decrease activity in the brain regions associated with anxiety. Create a consistent pre-sleep ritual that incorporates your chosen sensory anchors every single night. The consistency is crucial because it helps your brain create strong associations between these sensory experiences and the onset of sleep. Your nervous system gradually learns that these specific sensory inputs signal safety and the transition to rest. For example, Maria, an 83-year-old grandmother who suffered from severe nighttime anxiety following her husband's passing, created a sensory anchoring ritual using lavender essential oil and the weight of a special quilt made from her late husband's shirts. I place 3 drops of lavender oil on my pillow, then wrap myself in Richard's quilt, she explained. I focus completely on the familiar scent and the comforting. Within minutes, my racing thoughts begin to slow down, and most nights, I drift off without even realizing it's happening. It's been transformative after months of terrible insomnia that medication couldn't touch. Neuroscience explains why this works. When you fully engage your senses, you activate the parasympathetic nervous system, your body's natural relaxation response, while simultaneously giving your mind something concrete to focus on instead of abstract work. This is particularly beneficial for older adults, as the sensory anchoring technique requires no special equipment, has no side effects, and can be customized to individual preferences and physical capabilities. Dr. Sonia Ancoli Israel, a professor of psychiatry specializing in geriatric sleep disorders, notes, "What makes sensory anchoring so effective for older adults is that it's accessible regardless of mobility limitations or cognitive status. Even individuals with mild cognitive impairment can benefit from consistent sensory rituals that signal to the brain that it's time for sleep." To maximize the effectiveness of sensory anchoring, practice mindful attention to the sensory experience rather than passive exposure. This means consciously directing your full attention to the sensation, really noticing the scent, feeling the texture, or listening to the sound with your complete focus for at least 30 seconds per sensory element. The third approach that has helped countless older adults break free from anxiety-induced sleep problems is called cognitive time boxing. This technique directly addresses the rumination that often keeps anxious minds awake long into the night, consuming precious hours that should be devoted to restorative sleep. Cognitive time boxing works on a simple but powerful principle. Anxiety thrives in unstructured time and unlimited space. When you're lying in bed with hours stretching ahead and no boundaries for your thoughts, worry can expand indefinitely to fill that void. The solution is to create deliberate boundaries for when and where you allow yourself to worry. Here's how to implement this technique. First, schedule a specific 15-minute worry session earlier in the day, ideally in the afternoon, not too close to bedtime. During this designated time, sit in a specific location, never your bedroom, with a notepad and pen. Write down every concern, fear, or anxiety-provoking thought that's been on your mind. Be thorough and specific, naming each worry explicitly, rather than allowing it to remain as a vague sense of unease. Dr. Rebecca Strong, a geriatric psychologist who specializes in anxiety, explains, naming a worry in concrete terms immediately reduces its power. When we keep concerns vague, they seem overwhelming and unsolvable. Writing, "I'm worried about my upcoming medical test results," is much more manageable than a general sense of health anxiety. Second, for each worry you've listed, write one of three things: a specific action step you can take to address it, if it's within your control; a clear statement acknowledging if it's beyond your control, such as, "This is not something I can solve or influence," or a time when you'll address it if it's something that requires attention, but not immediately, such as, "I'll call my financial advisor on Tuesday at 10 a.m. Third, when the 15 minutes are up, physically close your notebook, put it away in a drawer or cabinet, and verbally declare, "My worry time is complete for today." This might sound overly simplistic, but research in cognitive behavioral therapy has demonstrated that this kind of structured worry time significantly reduces nighttime rumination. When worries inevitably arise as you're trying to fall asleep, you can remind yourself, "I've already given this thought its time to. I have permission to set it aside until tomorrow's worries." Dr. James Peterson, a geriatric psychiatrist specializing in sleep disorder, explains why this works particularly well for older adults. As we age, our cognitive control processes, the mental abilities that help us direct our attention and thoughts, can become less efficient. Time boxing provides external structure that compensates for this natural change, giving the aging brain clear boundaries for when to engage with worries and when to rest. The effectiveness of cognitive time boxing has been documented in multiple clinical studies. Research published in the Journal of Consulting and Clinical Psychology found that participants who practiced this technique for just 2 weeks experienced a 63% reduction in nighttime rumination and fell asleep an average of 25 minutes faster than those in a control group who received only standard sleep hygiene instructions. What makes this approach particularly valuable is that it acknowledges the legitimacy of your concerns rather than dismissing them. Many well-meaning friends or family members might say, "Don't worry so much," or "Try not to think about it," which rarely helps and often makes anxious people feel misunderstood. Cognitive time boxing instead says, "Your concerns matter and deserve attention, just not at 2 a.m. when nothing can be done about it." Robert, a 69-year-old retiree who implemented cognitive time boxing after struggling with anxiety-induced insomnia for over a decade, shares, "It felt strange at first, scheduling time to worry, but after about 2 weeks of consistent practice, I noticed something remarkable happening. When anxious thoughts would pop up at night, there was this new voice in my head saying, 'That's tomorrow's problem. You've closed the office for today.' Now I fall asleep within 20 minutes most nights, instead of tossing and turning for hours." For many older adults, cognitive time boxing also helps address a common issue that emerges in retirement: the lack of structured time boundaries that were previously provided by work schedule. Without these external time structures, worry can expand to fill available time. The time boxing technique creates helpful boundaries that contain anxiety rather than allowing it to permeate every hour of the day and night. If you found value in what we've discussed so far and are looking for natural ways to calm your mind and live with greater peace, our channel is a safe space created especially for you. Each week we share simple and effective techniques that have helped thousands of people reclaim their inner peace. We're together on this journey, and every step you take toward well-being matters. Click the subscribe button below and turn on notifications to receive our videos as soon as they're published. Remember, you don't need to face anxiety alone, and small changes can make a big difference in your quality of life. The fourth technique, which many find to be the most immediately effective for breaking the cycle of nighttime anxiety, is called physiological circuit breaking. This approach is based on the understanding that anxiety has both psychological and physical components that reinforce each other in a continuous loop. When anxious thoughts arise, they trigger physical stress responses like increased heart rate, shallow breathing, and muscle tension. These physical changes then signal to your brain that there's a legitimate threat, which intensifies the anxious thoughts, creating a self-perpetuating cycle that can seem impossible to escape, especially in the middle of the night. Physiological circuit breaking interrupts this cycle by directly addressing the physical component of anxiety. By changing your body's physiological state, you can send powerful signals to your brain that it's safe to relax, which in turn quiets anxious thinking. The technique centers around controlled breathing paired with progressive muscle relaxation, both adapted specifically for the unique needs of older adults. Here's the specific protocol that has shown the best results. Begin by lying comfortably in bed and placing one hand on your abdomen, just below your ribcage. Take a slow breath in through your nose for a count of 4, focusing on expanding your abdomen rather than your chest. This is called diaphragmatic breathing, and it activates the relaxation response much more effectively than shallow chest breathing. Hold the breath gently for a count of 2. This brief pause helps reset your breathing pattern and prevents hyperventilation, which can exacerbate anxiety. Then exhale slowly through slightly pursed lips, as if cooling soup, for a count of 6. The extended exhale is crucial as it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, directly countering the fight-or-flight response triggered by anxiety. Dr. Herbert Benson, founder of the Mind-Body Medical Institute at Massachusetts General Hospital, explains, the extended exhale is the key component in shifting the autonomic nervous system from sympathetic dominance, the stress response, to parasympathetic dominance, the relaxation response. This shift cannot occur with equal-length inhales and exhales. Repeat this breathing pattern 6 times, focusing entirely on the physical sensations of your breath. If your mind wanders to worries, gently bring your attention back to the physical sensation of breathing without self-criticism. Next, while maintaining this breathing pattern, systematically tense and then completely relax each major muscle group in your body, working from your feet up to your face. The key difference in this technique for older adults is the gentleness of the tension phase, rather than creating intense muscle contraction, which can be uncomfortable for those with arthritis or other physical conditions. Simply create enough tension to feel the muscle engage, then focus primarily on the release and the sensation of relaxation that follows. Dr. Elena Mikhailova, a neurologist specializing in sleep medicine, explains why this technique works so effectively. The extended exhale breathing pattern directly counters the shallow, rapid breathing pattern associated with anxiety. Meanwhile, the alternating tension and relaxation in the muscles sends powerful signals to the brain that it's safe to relax vigilance. For older adults especially, whose nervous systems may already be dealing with various physical discomforts, this gentle physiological reset can be transformative. This circuit-breaking technique is particularly valuable because it can be implemented right in the moment when anxiety strikes, without requiring any special equipment or preparation. It's also completely safe to use alongside any medications you might be taking for anxiety or sleep, making it an excellent complementary approach for those who find that medication alone isn't sufficient. William, a 77-year-old with chronic anxiety that regularly kept him awake until 3 or 4 a.m., shares his experience. I was skeptical that something as simple as breathing and tensing muscles could help after I'd tried so many sleep medicines with terrible side effects. But the very first night I tried the circuit-breaking technique, I fell asleep before I even finished the full body sequence. Now, 3 months later, I use it every night and typically fall asleep within 15 minutes. I've even been able to reduce my sleep medication with my doctor's supervision. For many older adults, physiological circuit breaking becomes most effective when practiced regularly, not just during moments of high anxiety. Daily practice, even when you're feeling relatively calm, strengthens the neural pathways that connect these physical techniques with the relaxation response, making the approach increasingly powerful over time. Dr. Michelle Drerup, Director of Behavioral Sleep Medicine at the Cleveland Clinic Sleep Disorders Center, recommends practice this technique for 5 minutes each day, ideally in the early evening. This regular training helps your body learn to shift into a relaxation response more quickly when you use the technique at bedtime. It's like any skill. The more you practice, the more automatic and effective it becomes. The fifth and final technique, which is often overlooked by healthcare providers, but has shown remarkable effectiveness for older adults with anxiety-related sleep disturbances, is called narrative reframing. This approach addresses one of the most troubling aspects of nighttime anxiety, the stories we tell ourselves about our sleep problems and what they mean for our overall health and future well-being. Many older adults who struggle with anxiety-induced insomnia develop increasingly negative narratives about sleep itself. They begin to see themselves as bad sleepers, or become convinced that their sleep problems are permanent and unresolvable. These narratives create anticipatory anxiety about bedtime, which paradoxically makes sleep even more elusive. The fear of another sleepless night becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Narrative reframing works by consciously creating a new, more accurate and helpful story about your relationship with sleep. This approach is grounded in the understanding that the stories we tell ourselves profoundly influence our physiological responses and Here's how to implement this technique. First, become aware of your current sleep narrative by completing this sentence. The story I tell myself about my sleep is. Common responses include statements like, I'm a terrible sleeper. I'll never get a good night's sleep again. My anxiety always ruins my sleep. Something is fundamentally wrong with me. Notice the absolute language often used in these narratives. Words like always, never, and terrible that leave no room for variation or improvement. Second, examine the evidence for and against this narrative. Most people discover their negative sleep stories are overgeneralizations based on their worst nights, ignoring any evidence of better sleep. Dr. Rachel Harris, a cognitive behavioral therapist who specializes in insomnia treatment, suggests, keep a simple sleep diary for a week, noting roughly how many hours you slept each night. Most people are surprised to find that even during periods of terrible sleep, they're actually getting some rest, just not as much as they'd like. This concrete evidence helps challenge catastrophic thinking about sleep. Third, craft a new, more balanced sleep narrative that acknowledges difficulties while remaining hopeful and accurate. For example, like many people, I sometimes struggle with sleep, especially when I'm anxious. However, my body naturally knows how to sleep, and with the right approaches, I can improve my sleep quality over time. Even on difficult nights, I can rest and recover to some degree. This reframed narrative acknowledges the reality of sleep challenges without catastrophizing them or making them part of your identity. Fourth, reinforce this new narrative through daily affirmations and by consciously correcting yourself when you slip into the old narrative. Dr. Samantha Wright, a geriatric psychologist specializing in late-life anxiety disorder, explains, the stories we tell ourselves are incredibly powerful, especially regarding sleep. For older adults who may have been struggling with sleep anxiety for years or even decades, these narratives become deeply ingrained. The simple but profound act of consciously creating a more balanced sleep story can break the cycle of fear and anticipation that makes sleep so elusive. The power of narrative reframing was transformative. A 74-year-old with a 30-year history of anxiety-related sleep problems. I had completely defined myself as an insomniac. It became part of my identity, she shares. When my therapist helped me see how this story was actually contributing to my sleep problems and guided me to create a new narrative, something shifted fundamentally. I stopped dreading bedtime so intensely. Within weeks, I was sleeping better than I had in years, simply because I approached sleep with less fear and more self-compassion. Narrative reframing is particularly important for older adults because sleep patterns naturally change with age. Many seniors interpret these normal changes as evidence of a sleep problem when they're actually experiencing typical age-related sleep evolution. Dr. Brandon Peters, a sleep medicine physician at Virginia Mason Medical Center, notes, as we age, our sleep architecture naturally changes. We may spend less time in deep sleep and more time in lighter stages of sleep. This is normal, but many older adults catastrophize these changes and develop anxiety, which then truly does disrupt sleep. Understanding that some changes are natural can reduce this anxiety significantly. The most effective approach for overcoming anxiety-related sleep disturbances combines all 5 techniques we've discussed. The Media Sunset Protocol to create a buffer between anxiety-provoking content and bedtime, helping your nervous system transition from alertness to relaxation. Sensory anchoring to ground yourself in present-moment physical experiences rather than abstract worries, engaging your senses to signal safety to your brain. Cognitive time boxing to give anxious thoughts their appropriate time and place, outside the bedroom, while creating clear boundaries that prevent rumination from consuming your nights. Physiological circuit break to interrupt the physical components of anxiety that keep you alert and tense, directly addressing the body-mind connection that perpetuates anxiety. Narrative reframing to transform the stories you tell yourself about sleep from sources of dread to sources of hope, reducing anticipatory anxiety about bedtime. As you implement these techniques, remember that consistency is crucial. The neural pathways that connect anxiety and sleep disturbance likely took years to establish. And while many people experience immediate relief with these approaches, creating lasting change requires practice and patience. Start by choosing just one technique that resonates most with you. Practice it consistently for 2 weeks, then gradually incorporate the others. Dr. Michael Bruce, a clinical psychologist and sleep specialist known as the Sleep Doctor, emphasizes the importance of this gradual approach for older adults. The aging brain responds best to consistent, repeated patterns. By focusing on mastering one technique at a time, you're much more likely to experience success and build the neurological pathways that support healthy sleep. Many of my older patients try to implement too many changes at once, become overwhelmed, and give up. Start small, be consistent, and build from there. And it's also worth noting that for some older adults, anxiety-related sleep disturbances may be complicated by other medical conditions like sleep apnea, restless leg syndrome, or the side effects of various medications. If you've been implementing these techniques consistently for a month without significant improvement, or if your sleep disturbances are accompanied by other symptoms like excessive daytime sleepiness, morning headaches, or observed breathing pauses during sleep, it's important to consult with a healthcare provider who specializes in geriatric sleep medicine. A comprehensive sleep evaluation can identify any underlying medical conditions that might be contributing to your sleep difficulty. However, even if medical issues are identified, the techniques we've discussed remain valuable complementary approaches. Dr. Alon Avidan, director of the UCLA Sleep Disorders Center, notes, even for patients with diagnosed sleep disorders like sleep apnea, addressing anxiety is crucial for optimal treatment outcome. A CPAP machine might address the breathing issues, but if anxiety remains untreated, sleep quality will still suffer. The most successful approach is typically a combination of appropriate medical treatment and behavioral techniques for anxiety management. Before we conclude, let's address one more crucial element in breaking the cycle of anxiety and poor sleep: self-compassion. Many older adults who struggle with sleep become their own harshest critics, adding layers of judgment, frustration, and even shame to their sleep difficulty. Research has consistently shown that this self-criticism actually intensifies anxiety and further impairs sleep quality. Dr. Kristin Neff, a pioneer in self-compassion research, defines self-compassion as treating yourself with the same kindness, concern, and support you'd show to a good friend. When applied to sleep difficulties, this means acknowledging that sleep problems are incredibly common, especially during the later stages of life, and don't reflect any personal failure. Speaking to yourself with gentle understanding rather than harsh criticism when you experience a difficult night. Recognizing that perfect sleep isn't the goal, good enough sleep is. Remembering that your worth as a person has nothing to do with how well you sleep. Martha, an 81-year-old who transformed her relationship with sleep after decades of anxiety and insomnia, shares this wisdom. The turning point for me wasn't any specific technique, though they've all been helpful. It was the day I stopped seeing myself as broken and started treating myself with gentleness. I realized I wouldn't dream of speaking to anyone else the way I spoke to myself about my sleep problem. That shift in attitude created space for real healing to begin. Research supports Martha's experience. A study published in the Journal of Behavioral Medicine found that participants who scored higher on measures of self-compassion experienced less anxiety about sleep, and, subsequently, better sleep quality than those who were highly self-critical. The good news is that self-compassion can be developed through practice. Simply noticing self-critical thoughts about sleep and consciously replacing them with more understanding and supportive statements can, over time, create new mental habits that support better sleep. If you found today's video helpful and want to continue this journey toward better sleep and reduced anxiety, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Each week, we share practical, science-backed approaches specifically designed to support the mental well-being. Your engagement also helps our content reach others who might be suffering silently with similar challenges. Remember to leave a comment sharing the specific thoughts that tend to keep you awake when anxiety strikes. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to feel less alone in their struggle. And if you've tried any of the techniques we've discussed today, we'd love to hear about your experience. The journey to better sleep isn't always linear, and sharing both successes and challenges helps everyone in our community learn and grow together. Thank you for spending this time with us today. Remember that anxiety doesn't have to control your nights, and with consistent practice of these evidence-based techniques, you can reclaim the restful, rejuvenating sleep your mind and body deserve. The peace of deep, restorative sleep is not beyond your reach, regardless of how long you've struggled. Small, consistent changes in your approach to both anxiety and sleep can lead to profound improvements in your quality of life. Until next time, take gentle care of yourself, and may your nights become increasingly peaceful.